The day my husband Mark finished his time in the countryside and was about to return caused a stir throughout the whole village. When that sedan with Beijing plates stopped at my door, he looked calm, as though he had long expected this moment. When it came to deciding who would go back to the city, he picked up our son and looked at me with guilt in his eyes. Back then, Evelyn saved our boy. We owe her. She wants to go to the city. I can't refuse. After a while, I'll come back to get you, all right? After saying that, he fell silent, only watching me and waiting for my reply. If I wasn't mistaken, Evelyn was already sitting in the car. In the 10 years I've known Mark, he often urged me to study more and complained that my head was filled with nothing but rice, oil and salt, household matters. But he never thought that if I didn't handle those chores, how could he live so detached from worldly concerns? Mark, whom my father once taught to read, was always quoting lofty sayings without end. I knew what he meant. He had begun to see Evelyn as the ideal wife in his heart. Then what about me, the woman who registered a marriage with him? What was I supposed to be? So when I faced his expectant gaze this time, my heart was calm as still water. I said evenly, I can't interfere with your decision. There are people in the village waiting for me to treat them. I'm going. When the news reached the village, Maggie ran in, panting, and cried out her congratulations. Lily, this is wonderful. You finally made it. I only smiled and nodded without speaking. After she left, Mark, returning home, frowned. Don't spend time with those rustic village women. You don't want to become that coarse, do you? In the past, I would only nod carefully at words like that. If he didn't want me to see them, I wouldn't. But now I looked up at him. You have the freedom to take whomever you want to the city. I have the freedom to spend time with whomever I choose. It was the first time I had ever contradicted him. Mark froze, then furrowed his brow. Are you angry? It's not like I won't bring you to the city. Do you have to be so narrow-minded? I laughed softly. Narrow-minded? Had he forgotten how he first put down roots here? The year he was sent down, he was bitten by a viper while cutting grass and collapsed by the roadside. I carried him home on my back, braving the village gossip, dragging him back from death's door. Everyone mocked me. A young woman carrying a grown man home. Who will ever marry you after that? You're worse than a divorced woman. Gossip alone was enough to destroy a woman. I cried through countless nights. But I still cared for him without regret. He complained our house was too cold. So I rose before dawn and hauled firewood from the hills. He wanted to practice calligraphy and read, so I clenched my teeth and spent all my savings to buy him what he needed. When he said he had no appetite, my father went to gather herbs for him and was caught in a mudslide. He never came back. Later, when Mark recovered, he wanted to settle here and marry me, and I agreed. In front of my father's memorial tablet, he swore, I, Mark, will treat Lily well from now on. And now he dares call me narrow-minded. I pressed my lips together, didn't argue further, and hurried to a patient's home. Mrs. Carter, lying weak on her sickbed, clutched my hand with tears in her eyes. Lily, thank you for looking after me for so long. I don't know how to repay you. Now that I hear you'll be going to the city for a better life, I can finally rest easy. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Everyone in the village believed Mark would take me to the city and said I was destined for an easy life. Only I knew I never had that fate. In my previous life, Mark took our son and Evelyn away and never returned for decades. So in this life, I decided to let go and allow them to be together. When I got home, I saw my son running out of my room, clutching several delicate hair ornaments. He offered them like treasures to Evelyn, who stood beside him. Aunt Evelyn, you can take all of these, he said. My son muttered, Mom's skin is so dark. Even with these pretty things, she still wouldn't look good. Evelyn laughed, pinched his cheek, and said, You mustn't end up like your mother. Once you fall into the eyes of money, you'll never crawl out again. My son grumbled under his breath, She's not my mom. I'd lost count of how many times I'd heard words like that. Evelyn played the role of the teacher lecturing. My son took the part of the student listening, while my husband sat silently to the side, holding a book and pretending not to hear. Neither father nor son ever truly respected me. They thought I wasn't worthy of them. To them, Evelyn made a more fitting family of 3. When did Mark start changing like this? It must have been after Evelyn returned from graduating at the women's college in the provincial capital. The village chief held a banquet for her that day, and when Mark came back from the feast, he looked as though he'd found a kindred spirit. He often sighed afterward, saying, "I never imagined such a remote village could produce such an open-minded and educated woman." Even my son clung to my leg and echoed, "Yeah, Mom, she's like a fairy. If only you were as pretty as she is." From then on, father and son drifted away from me. As I went about the village treating patients, I often saw them together. Beneath the willow tree, the tall young man I had supported through thrift and sacrifice would generously press money into Evelyn's hand. "Take it. If it's not enough, ask me for more." Evelyn pouted. "This few dollars isn't even enough for me to buy some cold cream." Did Evelyn really lack money? No. What she wanted was the identity of a city woman. I had seen through her little schemes long ago. In Mark's eyes, Evelyn was young and beautiful, while I was haggard, my skin rough like old bark. But he seemed to forget that once I had been the prettiest girl in the village. It was only after giving birth to our son and working myself ragged to keep this household running that I'd become like this. Mark sighed and said softly, "Lily doesn't earn much. Don't hold it against her." In my previous life, when I heard those words, my heart twisted in pain. I rushed to argue but shrank back at the disappointment in his eyes. "Stop being so petty and narrow-minded. Evelyn saved our son," he scolded. He wasn't wrong. One autumn, our son caught pneumonia and nearly didn't survive the winter. Evelyn had just returned from graduation and brought imported medicine that saved him. Thinking of this, I had no words, only silence as I watched them walk away. As time went on, their behavior grew more brazen. My son adored clinging to her, bringing over the steamed buns and meat I had painstakingly prepared for him and his father. The things I couldn't bear to eat myself ended up in another woman's hands. The villagers saw it all and mocked both me and Evelyn. When the village chief dragged her to the ancestral hall for punishment, Mark tried to follow her inside, but only members of the Shao family could enter. He was thrown out. Afterward, he came to me demanding divorce. He laid out his reasoning piece by piece, saying we had to help each other, that Evelyn's reputation could only be protected this way, that she couldn't keep being cursed by the villagers. Evelyn feared slander. Did he think I didn't? I refused. Mark slammed the door and stormed off. The next time I saw him, Evelyn was clinging to him, her eyes swollen from crying. "Then what about me?" she sobbed. In Mark's gaze, I saw a tenderness I had never been given. "Before I return to the city, I'll divorce her. Then I'll marry you. That promise I always spoke of, I'll make it real." In that moment, I thought maybe leaving would be the best thing for me. I wouldn't let Mark's return to the city sway me. I kept climbing the mountains to gather herbs, as always. When I returned home, Evelyn was there, counting their luggage. The medicine pills I had carefully prepared for Mark and our son were tossed aside like garbage. They didn't know that those so-called useless pills had been made from my father's secret recipes, the fruit of all my effort. They might not cure every illness, but they could treat many difficult conditions. Mark lowered his head to look at Evelyn, his face full of tenderness. "Nothing else matters," he murmured. "Mostly, make sure you bring the proper papers." Evelyn said with a shy smile, teasing, "You rascal." I knew exactly what papers they needed, to take wedding photos, to register the marriage. Poor me. In my last life, I only found out about this 5 years later, by which time I hadn't been able to reach Mark for a long while. Terrified that something had happened to him and our son, I went to the city alone, travel-worn and exhausted, bowing and asking directions from countless strangers until I finally arrived, only to see him holding Evelyn in his arms and throwing a grand birthday party for her, our son happily calling her Mom as they fussed over one another. When he saw me, his face changed, as if he'd seen something filthy, and then he heartlessly drove me out, shoving a wad of cash at me and sneering, "Isn't it money you want? Take it and get out. Don't ruin my parents' 5th wedding anniversary." Hearing that was like being struck by lightning. My son looked at me with disgust and spat, "You're already divorced? Stop clinging on. Do you want to be the other woman?" Hearing my own son, whom I had carried for 10 months, call me a homewrecker nearly made my knees give out. When Mark learned I had come, he gave me some money too and said, At first I was grateful to you, but my true love is Evelyn. Leave, I never want to see you again. Only then did I suddenly realize I had been a joke from the start. The last time we met, Evelyn and I were both tied up together. The ruffian principal, leering, new love and old love standing side by side. I couldn't believe he wouldn't save either of us. We couldn't lose out. Mark and my son arrived in a panic, but none of them gave me a look. When the kidnappers shoved me off the cliff, the three of them clung together and wailed. My death meant nothing more than a light thing to them. I begged heaven for another chance at life. Roused back to the present, I watched Mark approach, the adoration I once felt for him gone from my eyes. From now on, I'll send you living expenses every month, he said. You don't have to slave away gathering herbs anymore. I answered him calmly with a non-committal, Seeing my lack of response, he grabbed my hand. Go on, help me pack some of the clothes. Our son is asking for the meals you make. He says he won't be able to eat them for a long time. He added in a soft tone that, beneath the surface, reeked of condescension, as if their needing me were the greatest favor I could be given. I replied lightly, You said my patched clothes were shameful. Don't bother packing them. Throw them away. I glanced at our son. There's leftover food at home. If he wants to eat, he can heat it up himself. I have to go treat patients. I'm busy and have no time. Hearing that, both Mark and our son's faces changed. Mark grabbed me and hissed, Even if you're upset, don't make a scene in front of Evelyn. How embarrassing. Before he could finish, our son burst out. You go to people's homes to treat them. How much do you even earn? You'd be better off staying home to serve us. Do you want to end up like your father, gathering herbs on the mountain until you die? At those words I stiffened. My father had been a renowned, kind doctor across the countryside. I wouldn't let anyone slander his name. In the next second, my hand shot up, and I slapped our son hard across the face. Evelyn stepped in and blocked the blow for him, a look of triumph secretly playing in her eyes, even as tears ran down her cheeks. Sister Lily, you can't hit a child, she cried. Our son rushed forward like an enraged little beast and knocked me to the ground. Even Mark shoved me aside and reached to cup Evelyn's face. I hit the edge of the table with my lower back, and the pain made me dizzy. My son wasn't entirely wrong. The mountain work was indeed dangerous. Don't follow in your father's footsteps. Hearing that, I gritted my teeth and slapped Danny across the face. Mark, are you even a human anymore? Everyone can speak ill of my father, but you can't. He died gathering herbs for you. I remembered the times I went up the mountain to pick mushrooms, herbs, wild vegetables, and firewood. The two of them were never satisfied with what I brought back. When I broke my leg and nearly died in a tiger's den, they blamed me for being careless. Now, standing there in front of Evelyn, they suddenly started pretending to be considerate. That evening, Mark held me and whispered an apology. I've already sent Danny to the Xiao household. He's still a child. Don't be angry. During the day, it was my fault for speaking without thinking. Sorry. He hadn't finished when someone knocked hard on the door. Uncle Jean came in carrying a measuring stick and a buyer with him. Lily, I've got time now. Let's inventory all the mountain goods, he said. Mark slowly turned his head and looked at me with contempt. Why suddenly sell everything? He asked. I nodded on purpose and replied, You said you'd come back to get me after some time, didn't you? These things are useless to keep. Selling them will get a little more money. Mark didn't answer, but the familiar disdain rose again in his eyes. He'd always thought I cared only for rice, oil, and salt, and for money and trinkets, so worldly. But the money I'd saved was never for myself. It all went to him and to Danny. The cold cream he gave Evelyn, I hadn't even dared buy that for myself in my last life. I had a clear conscience. Before long, the mountain goods were weighed, packaged, and sold. Mark looked at the neat handwriting on the receipt and, surprised, said, You write pretty well. I laughed mockingly. 10 years as a married couple, and he had never respected me. Of course, he assumed I only did rough work. He once said, Your hands are too coarse. They're not fit for writing or sewing. He also told Evelyn, With hands as long and slender as yours, how could you do rough work? I'll make you a lady who never touches water for laundry. Let me do all the hard work for you. But he never kept that promise. The dirty, tiring jobs he'd taken on were taken over by the pitying me, and he naturally enjoyed my care while looking down on me. Just as I was seeing Uncle Zhang out, someone came running from afar. Brother Sheng? Brother Sheng, Evelyn and her father are arguing. Go take a look. Mark threw the door open and dashed out, abandoning me like he had countless times before. I stopped Uncle Zhang. Uncle, I don't want this house anymore. Please, ask around the village. If anyone wants it, sell it for whatever they'll pay. All right, he said. The buyer came the next morning and we quickly settled on a price. I looked at the empty house and thought that Mark had spent the night with Evelyn and wouldn't come back. Sure enough, Arya rushed over calling, Sister Lily, your brother-in-law asked you to see him off at the village gate. When I arrived, Evelyn was dabbing Mark's sweat with a handkerchief while Danny beamed. Great, from now on, she's my mom. We finally got rid of that old woman, right, Dad? Mark smiled helplessly. Yes. But when he comes, give him a smile too, Evelyn said, then took out a stack of red envelopes from her pocket. Fellow villagers, thank you for taking care of me and Evelyn these years. These are a little something. Agreeable? Over the years he'd never given me anything. He'd even sold some of the jewelry my father bought me. Now as he left me nothing, generously handing out money to people he didn't even know, all to make Evelyn look good, and to tell everyone Evelyn would have a good life. But he never thought about how others would see me. Facing the mocking looks of the villagers, I stepped forward. Evelyn leaned close under the guise of a hug and whispered in my ear, The Yang family is too high for you to reach. They don't need a wife like you. If you love them, then don't show up again. To them, you're nothing but a burden. I lifted my eyes to her. I didn't cry, didn't argue. I simply said, to them and to myself, safe travels. The car rolled away, kicking up a cloud of dust that blurred my vision. The villagers slowly dispersed, and I looked toward the ox cart I had rented not far away. For the first time, I smiled from the heart. Wonderful. I was leaving too. Lily, in this life, you must live for yourself. When Mark returned to the city, all the prominent figures gathered at the family compound. Minister Yang from the health department beamed so wide he could hardly close his mouth. Ah, this must be my little grandson. Then this is my daughter-in-law. His approving gaze fell on Evelyn, whose face flushed with shyness. Mark, however, said nothing. For reasons he couldn't name, looking at that cheerful scene made him think of me, alone and desolate back in the village. He picked up Danny and sat down. The banquet began, with a variety of rich dishes served. Evelyn smiled and filled his bowl. Eat more. Mark accepted everything, but he found no appetite for the delicacies. His stomach had already been spoiled by me. Back when he was recovering from his injury, I had cared for his every meal. I was the one who prepared his special diets. When he said they were bland, I ground herbs into powder and experimented over and over until I found the taste he liked. It was the same for Danny. At the table now, he pushed away the dishes Evelyn's family offered, frowning. This is awful. I won't eat it. Evelyn, who had always been gentle with him, allowed no refusal this time. You just got here. Do you want to make Grandpa and Grandma dislike you? Startled, Danny opened his mouth and swallowed. His stomach churned with nausea, and the food tasted like wax. In that moment he thought of me, his real mother. After the feast ended, he gulped down water to suppress his gagging and tugged on Mark's sleeve, his voice aggrieved. Dad, I feel sick. I want to eat the meals Mom made. Mark sighed, looking at him. I want them too, but since we're back, we need to adapt here. Evelyn masked the glint in her eyes and reminded, Little one, you must change how you address us. You can't call him Dad anymore, you must say Papa. And don't call her Mom, you must say Mama. Otherwise people will laugh and call you a country bumpkin. She gave a cold laugh. You don't want to end up like your mother being laughed at, do you? Danny pressed his lips together, then nodded. I know. I'll never be as pathetic as that stupid woman. No sooner had he spoken than Evelyn's attendants led him away. He needs to learn rules, Evelyn explained. Mark tried to interject. He just got here, let him rest a few days. But then Evelyn's syrupy voice followed. But I want time alone with you. Danny's eyes reddened as he was pulled off. Suddenly he realized Evelyn wasn't as kind to him as before. That night, Mark tossed and turned, unable to sleep. He hadn't eaten much at the banquet, and now his stomach ached badly. Looking around the empty mansion, he thought of our small hut back in the village. Back then, when he couldn't eat and his stomach hurt, I would gently massage it every night. "Drink this medicine," I would say. "I made it for you. It'll make you feel better." I would hold the bowl to his lips. He'd frown at the bitterness, and I would laugh softly. "Don't worry," I added brown sugar, "and the way I prepared it, it isn't bitter." Sure enough, it wasn't. As he drank, his eyes rested on my face. He once thought that having me as his wife was the greatest fortune of his life. But what did he do afterward? Even though there had been several spots to return to the city, he selfishly chose only our son and Evelyn, leaving me behind in that village without mercy. When the pain in his stomach grew unbearable, he staggered out of bed and rummaged through his luggage. He remembered I had secretly stuffed medicine inside. Sure enough, at the bottom of the bundle he found the old porcelain jar. The powder inside was made by me. He mixed a cup and drank it down in one gulp. The familiar taste of herbs mingled with the sweetness of brown sugar eased his stomach pain. Suddenly he found himself missing me. "Dad." "Not Papa." Danny stood at the door, carefully poking his head in. "I want to sleep with you." Mark glanced at him and immediately knew what was on his mind. Smiling, he said, "You miss your mom." Danny nodded, his eyes reddening. "People here are so mean. They say I don't know anything, that I'm not worthy of being the Yang family's eldest grandson." Mark frowned and silently took note of it. He stood and went to the telephone, dialing the public phone in the village. "Hello, who is this?" came a familiar country voice. Mark softened his tone. "Uncle Ning, could you please tell Lily tomorrow to give me a call?" "All right," came the reply. Hanging up, he rubbed Danny's head. "Go on, get in bed." Danny smiled, jumped up and clung to him, then tilted his face up. "Papa, are you really going to marry Evelyn?" Hearing this, Mark's mind flashed with my face, yet he still nodded. Danny pressed further. "Then what do you like about Evelyn? Why do you like her?" Mark froze. After a pause, he answered, "Because she understands propriety and she can read and write. She and I are of the same world." He remembered the first time he met Evelyn, sitting under a tree with her head bent over a book, sunlight streaming over her, beautiful beyond words. And there I was, standing in front of her with herbs in hand, smiling as I offered her the herbal sachet I had sewn. "The village chief said you haven't been sleeping well. I made this sleeping sachet for you. Take it." My dark, rough hands contrasted so sharply with Evelyn's slender, jade-like fingers that Mark couldn't lift his head. Looking at me, then looking at her, he thought, if only Lily were more like Evelyn. Later, he and Evelyn spoke of literature, of new knowledge from outside, of fashionable stories from the city. He was dazzled by her talent and knowledge, and for the first time in years, he felt exhilarated. Thinking back, he believed bringing Evelyn back had been worth it. The next morning, Evelyn pushed the door open and frowned at Danny lying on Mark's bed. "You're already too old. You can't keep clinging to your father." Danny looked at her as though she were a stranger, his eyes brimming with grievance. Evelyn, who once comforted him, ignored him this time and instead turned to Mark. "Mark, when are we going to register for our marriage license?" At those words, Mark remained silent for a long time. Before leaving the village, he had divorced me, swearing it wasn't for Evelyn, but only so Danny could have a city household registration. For Danny's sake, I had agreed. But all of this had been for Evelyn. So why was he hesitating now? Just then, the phone rang. Mark lifted his head, but Danny rushed over first, shouting into the receiver, "Mom!" Yet he suddenly froze. Mark sensed something was wrong and quickly asked, "What is it?" Danny's voice trembled with sobs. "Uncle Ning said, Mom is missing." Uncle Ning said that on the day we left the village, Lily had already gone. She never came back. Evelyn's hands tightened, and just as Mark was about to rush out the door, she grabbed his arm. "Don't panic. Before we left, she asked me for the Yang family's address. Maybe she came here on her own. Honestly, taking an ox cart, she couldn't possibly travel as fast as our car. Just wait a couple more days. She might show up." Hearing this, Mark didn't doubt her. The worry in his eyes shifted into annoyance and impatience. Didn't she realize her sudden arrival could cause unnecessary trouble? With a sigh, he turned to the housemaid. "Send someone to keep watch outside the city gates. If Lily shows up, bring her directly to me." But half a month passed, and still there was no word. Mark asked the guards if they had seen the person he'd described, but everyone shook their heads. For once, Mark lost his composure and decided on the spot to return to the village to search for me. Evelyn protested. "You promised we'd register our marriage these days. Why do you still want to go looking for her?" Mark's eyes revealed a hint of exhaustion. "Stop being unreasonable. What I promised you, I'll keep. But she is my savior. Now she's missing. I must find her." "You can't. I won't allow it." Evelyn's eyes reddened. "Then what about me?" Mark frowned. Over the past 2 weeks, he had watched Evelyn buying jewelry and hosting banquets for neighbors, and he had already begun to feel some dissatisfaction. Now, seeing her throw a tantrum, the illusions he once held of her shattered completely. "Enough. I'll marry you as soon as I come back." He ordered people to stop Evelyn and left with Danny. On the road, he told his son, "If we find your mother, you need to behave, understand?" Danny nodded, his eyes shining with excitement at the thought of seeing me again. He had endured enough of the Yang family these days, and his longing for me had only grown stronger. But when they reached the village, they found nothing. Not only was I gone, even the house we once lived in had already been taken by someone else. Mark stared blankly at the place. Now so different. "Where's Lily?" he asked. Urya sat nearby cracking sunflower seeds and spat sharply. "Heartless man, ungrateful wolf. You abandoned Sister Lily. Why would she stay here? To let people spit her to death? She left long ago." Danny clutched Mark's hand, eyes brimming red. "Where did Mom go?" Mark's throat bobbed, but no words came. In his mind, he saw my lonely back fading away. He ordered people to search for me, but I knew nothing of this. By then, I was already on the road. Along the way, I rescued a woman burning with fever, unconscious and delirious. "Thank you for saving my life," she said weakly. "I'll never forget it." I smiled. "Meeting like this means we were destined to cross paths. I couldn't just let you die. Take these medicine drops with you. Your body carries heavy dampness. This will help draw it out." The woman stared at me, stunned, then suddenly asked, "How skilled are you in medicine?" I sensed something behind her words and asked, "Do you have a family member who needs treatment?" She nodded, tears spilling again. "My father has a rare illness. We've seen several doctors, but none could cure him. Could you come back with me to take a look?" My father had always told me that saving a single life was worth more than building a 7-story pagoda of virtue. So without hesitation, I agreed. On the road, she told me her name was Yang Yuzhen. Her family ran a small business a bit far from here. I asked her about the symptoms, but for now I couldn't yet determine what kind of illness it was. But I had already prepared myself. "I can try," I told them. "This illness is somewhat similar to a rare condition my father once mentioned. I think I can give it a shot." The Yang family had long since given up hope. When they saw me, they only waved me in, with the politeness reserved for the inevitable. I checked Mr. Yang's pulse and finally let out a breath of relief. "It's not too late. Stop all the other treatments. He needs to take this instead, and I'll also prepare him nourishing meals." Mrs. Yang rubbed her temples and nodded. "Do as she says." As it turned out, Yuzhen had fainted on the road because she had gone to seek out an old doctor. But when she arrived, she learned he had died in the mountains while gathering herbs. With that, all their hope had vanished. None of them expected that after taking my medicine, Mr. Yang would be able to sit up and eat the very next day. Everyone was stunned. Yuzhen and her mother came into my room together and fell to their knees. "Dr. Lin, you saved my father. You're our family's lifesaver." Mrs. Yang's eyes brimmed with tears. "You're our family's benefactor. We don't even know how to repay such kindness." I smiled and helped Yuzhen up. "Thank you for your trust. Your father's illness will be cured soon. Don't worry." Within a month, Mr. Yang had recovered to his previous state. To celebrate, he held a banquet and, before the guests arrived, came to find me. "Thank you. These are just tokens of my gratitude. You must accept them, or I won't be at ease." He gave me a city home with a courtyard, a shop, and some property. "Dr. Lin, settle here. If you wish to heal the world, I will support you fully." My heart felt warm. By chance, my father had once spoken of this illness, and through a twist of fate, I had cured it. Mr. Yang looked at me and asked cautiously, "May I ask, is your father Lin Zhengguo?" At this, he staggered back in shock. "You? You're his daughter? It turned out the illness was hereditary, and years ago it was my father who had saved his father. Eugen had originally gone to seek out my father. With this new bond, Mr. Yang pressed even more gifts into my hands until finally his guests began to arrive. Only then did he calm down and pull me forward for introductions. This is the Minister of Health. You may call him Minister Yang. He's my eldest brother. Turning to the minister, he said, "This is the young doctor who saved me. Brother, don't you have some pharmaceutical problems you've been struggling with? Maybe if you ask her, everything can be solved." Looking at Minister Yang, I froze for a moment. By a twist of fate, I had come face to face with Mark's father in this life. But I didn't let personal feelings interfere with my work. With Mr. Yang's support, I gradually gained a foothold in the city and spread my reputation. The meals I crafted not only detoxified but also strengthened the body, quickly making me famous. The herbal sachets I sewed gave relief to countless people suffering from insomnia. Even difficult and complicated illnesses, I tackled with my experience and determination. For the toughest cases, a brief consultation with Minister Yang always led to solutions. Yes, under Mr. Yang's guidance, I formed a partnership with the minister. I was glad to do the work anonymously. Minister Yang often looked at me and sighed, "So talented, if only I had a daughter like you." I only smiled without replying. On the day I founded my own pharmaceutical company, Minister Yang was there, and Mr. Yang cheerfully welcomed the guests. "Mark, come over here," he called. He smiled as he introduced, "This is Mark Yang, my eldest nephew, my brother's son. A few years ago he was sent down to the countryside, and he's only just come back. Such a pity. If he didn't already have a child, I would have wanted to introduce the two of you." I kept a polite smile, pretending not to notice Mark standing frozen in place. "Hello, I'm Lily," I said. It had been half a year since we'd last seen each other. He had lost weight, dark circles under his eyes, his face weary. But without a son tying me down to his shadow anymore, I was free to study medicine in earnest and also take care of myself. My skin had regained its glow. The hair I had once cut short for convenience had grown long again, black and shiny, with no trace of gray. Even my hands, once rough as bark, had become fair and smooth again under Eugen's constant reminders to take care of them. If Mark hadn't seen my beauty before, he never would have recognized me now. "You're so cruel." After Mr. Yang left, Mark stared at me, his voice hoarse. "If not for running into you today, were you planning to hide from me forever?" I met his gaze calmly. "I never deliberately avoided you, but I never wanted to see you either. You abandoned me, so I don't want you anymore. Mark, I'm now Minister Yang's business partner. I hope you won't make things awkward for us both." His lips moved as if to speak again, but Evelyn came running, clutching his arm. "Mark, who is this?" At first she didn't recognize me, but when our eyes met, her own widened in disbelief. "It's you? How could it be?" Her raised voice drew attention from the people around us. Minister Yang walked over, frowning. "What are you doing shouting like that in public? How improper." Then he turned to me, apologetic. "Lily. No, now it should be President Lin. My son's friend was being disrespectful. Don't take it to heart." I caught the word friend sharply. It surprised me. Could it be that in this life, Mark had never married Evelyn? Listening to Minister Yang's attempt to smooth things over, I didn't pursue the matter. But Evelyn wouldn't let go. "Uncle, don't be fooled. She's just a peasant girl with no real skill. How could someone like her start such a big pharmaceutical company?" "Shut up," Mark snapped, unable to bear it any longer. He yanked her back. "What do you think you're doing?" Watching their exchange, I smiled. So this was what their relationship had become. The guests around us all turned their eyes on the scene. I stepped in to diffuse it. "It's nothing important, everyone. Please don't take it seriously. Before you leave, I'll have Xiaozhan prepare some gifts for you all, as a token of appreciation." Seeing my composure and confidence, Mark shook off Evelyn's arm. Then our son was brought over from the children's table. When his eyes fell on me, confusion flickered across his face. The moment he recognized me, he could hardly hide his shock. You're my mom?" In his memory, I had always been shabby, coarse, and ugly. But now he ran into my arms, eyes shining. "Mom, you've become so beautiful. Are you here to marry Dad? I missed you so much." I pulled my hands free, cutting him off. In the private room, Minister Yang, who had been frozen in shock, finally came back to his senses after hearing the whole story. A furious slap landed squarely on Mark's face. "You disgraceful fool," Minister Yang roared. "How could you do such shameful, worthless things? How could you treat Lily this way?" Mark lowered his head, the red mark spreading across his cheek. "I was wrong, Dad. I was wrong. Please, let me talk to her alone, just once." Minister Yang's anger burned hotter, his hand raised again, but I stopped him. He looked at me with eyes full of pain and said, "You've suffered enough. No matter what you decide in the end, I'll support you. Even if you don't want this ungrateful brat, I won't blame you. He deserves it." With that, he slammed the door and left. Only Mark and Danny remained, both staring at me. Danny clung tightly to my hand, refusing to let go. "Mom, don't leave me. I was wrong. I don't want Evelyn to be my mother. I want you and Dad to remarry." Looking at him, I remembered my past life, how he had thrown money in my face, calling me a mistress. Now he only remembered me because life with Evelyn had soured. Selfish, cold, no different from his father. I pulled my hand free and sneered, "I'm not your mother, and I'm not your wife." Mark said nothing, then suddenly dropped to his knees in front of me, eyes fixed on mine. "I'm sorry, it's all my fault, but I've been searching for you for half a year. I've missed you so much. I finally understand my own heart. It's you I love, Lily. It's you I've always loved. Please, give me another chance." "Enough." My voice cut him off, low and cold, as nausea rose in my stomach. Danny burst into tears, wailing so loudly my head throbbed. I knew I couldn't keep avoiding them forever, so better to speak plainly now. "Seeing you reminds me of my foolish, wasted youth. Seeing you, Mark, makes me sick to my stomach, unable to sleep. You don't love me. You only care that I was good to you. You're just unwilling to let go. Get out. I never want to see you again." When Yuzhin heard what happened, she came right away. Glancing at the father and son leaving, then at me, she said firmly, "Serves them right. My father always said men like that are worse than pigs and dogs." She hugged me tightly. "Don't worry. Even if he's my cousin, I'll never let him hurt you again." My pharmaceutical company officially opened, and I had no time to waste on them anymore. I created jobs for women who had nowhere else to go, gathering herbs for me to buy, sorting them, packaging, and selling the medicines. My business flourished. When Minister Yang came to visit, he couldn't help but marvel. "You really are remarkable, turning life into something so beautiful. I was right about you. Such a pity about that useless son of mine." I knew he still wished I'd become his daughter-in-law, so I said it clearly. "Uncle Yang, there's no chance between your son and me." Those words reached Mark as he entered, carrying a bouquet of flowers. His lips moved. "Lily?" I frowned, but then he said, "I came to order nutritional meals and sachets. I'm sorry." He set the bouquet on the table, then turned back at the door. "I'll wait, for the day you forgive me." Minister Yang left with him, scolding non-stop along the way. I heard the rumors soon enough, how Mark had thrown Evelyn out, how she had caused a scene at the Yang family's gates before being packed off back to the village. But what did that have to do with me? I told Xiaozhang to take apart the flowers and share them among the women working at their stations. "May these bring you happiness every day," I said. Then I turned and found my son standing there, eyes brimming with tears. Before he could speak, I pulled a red envelope from my bag and handed it to him. "This is your support. I'll give it to you every month. Don't come looking for me anymore." In my past life, he used money to drive me away. In this one, it was my turn to use money to send him off. He burst out crying, shouting through the tears, "I don't want money. I want my mom. I miss you." Danny's voice cracked. I waved my hand, and Xiaozhang called someone to escort him away, sending him back to the Yang household. In the days that followed, I spent most of my time traveling by train across the country, negotiating partnerships. I hardly ever saw them again. On the rare occasions when we did cross paths, Mark only helped me quietly from behind, never disturbing my life. He never remarried. Danny grew up into the capable young man I had once wished for. Both father and son still wanted to see me, but they didn't dare force their way into my world against my will. After one particular business trip, I gave myself a short vacation. Glancing into the rearview mirror, I saw the two of them silently following me. I sighed. Back when I chased after them, they treated me like garbage. Now that I had built a life of my own, they finally began to respect me. That's the way it is. If you don't respect yourself, no one else will. You must live for yourself, at least once.